Okay, so let's get started. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Brownfields for Beginners Boot Camp, sponsored by Clean Sweep Frederiksted. In today's boot camp, we're going to be discussing what a brownfield is, what some of the negative impacts associated with brownfields are, what some of the opportunities associated with brownfields are. We're going to talk about brownfields planning. We're going to talk about the brownfields process in the Virgin Islands. We are also going to talk about EPA's Brownfields funding program, which includes their MARC grants as well as their workforce development grants or job training grants. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to prepare early for an EPA grant. So joining me today as speakers will be Austin Callwood. He's with Virgin Islands DPNR. Also joining me is Terry Wesley and Shanine Mitchell from EPA Region 2. But before we dive into the meat of the presentations, I just want to turn it over to Robert Protho, who is the Vice Chair for Clean Sweep Frederiksted. And he's going to provide us with some opening remarks. So with that, Robert, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sean. Good morning, everyone. As Sean said, I'm Robert Protho. I'm the founder of the Coaches Corner and the vice chairman of Clean Sweep Frederiksted Community Development Corporation. Clean Sweep was founded back in 2014, and it was founded by Virginia Claremont in response to the ongoing economic decline here in the Virgin Islands. And there were large amounts of litter in and around the town of Frederiksted. Early on, as a one-woman show, Virginia led many efforts in the community around projects, Clean Sweep Day, which was a town-wide cleanup, MLK Day cleanup on King Street here in Frederiksted. If you live in Frederiksted, you've seen some of the community paint that's been around on the boardwalk as part of the public art trail here in Frederiksted. Clean Sweep has transitioned though. And 2 years ago, Virginia created a board, and Clean Sweep became a community development corporation. And that's how I got involved with the organization. Our mission as an organization is to lead the economic development and revitalization of Frederiksted. We're a community-based economic development organization, and we sponsored this boot camp today because we not only wanted to educate ourselves, we want to educate the community on Brownfields and what they are and where the opportunities might be within St. Croix. So we're looking, I'm looking, and the board's looking to learn more about Brownfield, how to identify potential sites for rehab, how to apply for grant funding, being able to work with other community organizations to in that identification process, and then to be able to prioritize sites, hopefully identify local partners that have experience in the remediation process, do a little bit of workforce development to train additional staff here on the Virgin Islands to do some of that remediation, and then to actually get the work done and to remediate some of the sites as part of our revitalization efforts. So that's why we sponsored the boot camp, and that's why I'm here today.
Great. Thank you, Robert, for your remarks, and as well, again, for hosting today's boot camp. So for those of you that are not familiar with what NJIT TAB is, I'm going to quickly go through who we are and what we do. Before I do that, though, I just want to go over some quick housekeeping. Everyone, you're all going to be muted as participants throughout today's boot camp. If you would like, we'd ask that you submit your questions, any questions that you might have, to the WebEx Q&A pane. We will be recording today's boot camp, so and we'll make it available on our website as well as the slides. You can you'll be able to find them at www.njit.edu/tab. And if you look under the resources tab, you'll find them there, and I'll post them as soon as possible. So as communities, tackle their brownfields projects, they are inevitably going to have some questions, such as, how do I identify and secure funding? How do I engage the community? How do I understand some of the technical issues, so on and so forth, as you move through this redevelopment process. And that's where NJIT tab can help. NJIT tab serves as an independent resource to state, territorial, regional, county, tribal, and local governments, as well as nonprofits that are attempting to learn about, identify, assess, clean up, and redevelop brownfields. And the best part of this program is that all of the assistance we provide is 100% free of charge. And we are able to do that because EPA provides us with the funding through a grant and a cooperative agreement. And then we can then provide those services to the brownfield communities for free. So the NJIT TAB team, we're a group of professionals, we're planners, we're engineers, environmental scientists, and social scientists, and we've provided assistance to hundreds of communities across multiple EPA regions. Our assistance is available to communities throughout the entire brownfields redevelopment process. We provide our services, or the structure of our program is basically has three mechanisms to it. We have our resource center, we have our educational and engagement forums, and then we have our one-on-one direct technical assistance. And I'm going to briefly explain what each one of these are. So the first is the NJIT TAB Resource Center. Our website contains a lot of valuable information. It includes lots of resources such as federal and state funding sources, state and EPA contact information. We archive previously recorded webinars and downloads of some of the workshops and boot camps such as today's. We have success stories. There are frequently asked questions up on the page. We have how-to videos. We also have examples of successful grant applications from previous solicitation years. We also have a hotline and a dedicated, easy to remember email address you can see up on the slide. And we also provide valuable information via our social media platforms. The second way that we provide assistance is through our educational and engagement forums, and we design and conduct workshops on brownfields and brownfield-related topics. For example, EPA grant writing workshops, as well as brownfields basic workshops. Our seminars are a little bit of a deeper dive into brownfields-related issues such as environmental liability. We design and hold half-day or full-day boot camps on topics such as green stormwater infrastructure and brownfields, creative placemaking, brownfields for beginners, such as today. We also do webinars. Our webinar topics in the past have included brownfields remediation 101 and how to get the right contractor on board. And along with our EPA and state government and territorial partners, we conduct all grantee meetings. And even with the restrictions that have been imposed through, because of COVID, and it's restricted our in some cases, our in-person gatherings, we've transformed some of those educational forums into virtual events such as today. So we have hopefully in the future, we're going to be able to get more in-person meetings or maybe hybrids to be able to reach a wider audience. And then the third way that we provide assistance is through our one-on-one interaction. And as I mentioned earlier, all along the brownfields redevelopment process, communities are going to have questions. They can call us or email us with those questions, and we'll provide them with the answers. We do recognize that every community's needs and challenges are different. The type and depth of technical assistance will be tailored to meet those specific needs. So some examples of the one-on-one assistance we typically provide, we help identify different brownfield funding sources. We can review draft EPA grant applications and provide suggestions on how to make them, strengthen them and make them more competitive, hopefully. We've provided this service for hundreds of applications or applicants throughout the years. We assist communities in developing strategies on how to market their brownfield sites. We develop brownfield prioritization processes to help communities identify which projects are best to focus on first. So again, these are just some examples. And again, we do tailor the assistance to meet your particular or the community's particular needs. So not knowing, so if we take a look at this slide, in case anybody isn't clear on what the definition of a brownfield is, it is a property. The expansion, redevelopment, or reuse of may be complicated by the presence or potential presence of a hazardous substance, pollutant, or contaminant. Or as we like to refer to them, they're a commercial real estate deal with an environmental twist. So again, not knowing how familiar you are with the term brownfield, I thought I'd start with the, oh, I'm sorry, these two slides somehow got we went over the definition. You know what a brownfield is, but you may not be aware of the definition, but I'm sure that you're aware of brownfields that are located within your community. So, you know, typically they include old mills, factories, chemical plants, junkyards, basically the byproducts of our industrial legacy. Closed gas stations and auto repair shops, former dry cleaners, and some other vacant commercial properties are also considered brownfields, and those are due to either their past uses or the types of building materials that were used at the time of their construction. It's important to point out that not all contaminated sites are brownfields, and not all brownfields are contaminated. For instance, an active gas station that experiences a leaking underground storage tank is a contaminated property, but it's not a brownfield, and that's because it's still functioning as a gas station. Conversely, a property containing a closed auto repair facility would be considered a brownfield because it's a former commercial site that is currently vacant, and because of its past use, there may be contamination. However, it's not necessarily contaminated. So as you know, brownfields cause negative impacts to communities. They can contribute to neighborhood deterioration and the negative perception of the neighborhood. They can attract vandals, open dumping, or other illegal unwanted activity. They can degrade the soil, water, and air quality, and potentially cause public health issues. They can lower property values, reduce employment opportunities, lead to a loss of tax revenue, and limit economic growth. But brownfield sites have some advantages. Many of these sites are located along waterways and rail lines and in downtowns, giving them a locational advantage for redevelopment. And many already have existing infrastructure, such as utility and sewer lines, which make these properties more attractive than land that has not been previously developed. And most of all, brownfields, they hold the potential for being transformed into a community asset. So while these industrial legacy and commercial sites plague our communities, the cleanup and redevelopment of brownfields present us with opportunities that include the triple bottom line: environment, economic, and social equity. So when we clean up brownfield sites, we're improving the environment. Brownfields can also be redeveloped to deal with climate change issues, such as persistent flooding, by creating land uses that store flood waters, such as rain gardens or multi-use fields. Redeveloping brownfield sites can improve communities' economic conditions by catalyzing economic development, creating jobs, increasing tax revenue, and diversifying the local economic base. And redeveloping brownfield sites can help to improve social equity in so many different ways, including by removing health and safety hazards, removing eyesores, and alleviating community fears and worries, and transforming these properties into community-needed uses. So the basic steps in redevelopment, in the redevelopment process, include essentially, you plan for your project, you engage your community, you identify your funding sources, and then you assess and clean up the site and ultimately redevelop the site. So the first phase of work should be the planning phase, and it's widely recognized that successful brownfield redevelopment projects are based on a foundation of sound planning practices. There's a strong correlation between effective early on and continued planning with redevelopment success. So there's a number of activities that should be initiated in the planning phase that will play an important role throughout the redevelopment process, and I'm going to discuss the more common ones. There are, however, two that are extremely critical for success, and they include partnerships and stakeholders and assessing where you are at. And the reason they are so critical is that they comprise the bedrock of a brownfields project, as all other elements are supported by them and relate to them in some way. Now, the list I have on this slide isn't in any sequential order for time or importance, as many of these elements can occur concurrently. So the first element of a brownfields redevelopment plan is identification of a project champion. Project champion is an individual with the time, energy, and persistence to keep a project moving forward. They should be organized and have the passion to advocate and promote the project. The next element is community engagement, which is extremely important and many times overlooked or done poorly. I won't go into any detail on this element because I'm going to discuss it in a little more detail in the next section. Having a project vision. You can't plan a trip if you don't know where you want to go. Developing a vision as early on as possible is extremely beneficial, as it can help direct many of the other project elements, such as identifying a developer, identifying and securing funding, and level of remediation related to end use. I should also mention that having a clear and informed vision is the direct result of having included the appropriate stakeholders and partners in the process, as well as the implementation of solid community engagement plan. So next is having a brownfields inventory. This element typically pertains to brownfield projects that focus on a target area, such as a downtown, a waterfront, or a community gateway. Having a list of brownfield sites at the ready supports land assemblage for larger projects. It puts you in a good position to pursue funding, and it promotes a comprehensive redevelopment approach that meets the community's needs. Prioritization of identified brownfields. Once you identify your brownfield sites, what you should basically do is prioritize them to identify those with the highest redevelopment potential, whether that be for economic redevelopment, open space, recreational space, or whatever reuse is in line with your community's vision or goals. Examples of prioritization criteria include the site size, access to the site, what's the zoning, environmental conditions such as contamination, flooding, or wetlands being present on the site, what master plan or development plan says about a site, existing infrastructure as well. It gets you basically the low-hanging fruit. And it's important because it gets the ball rolling on a brownfields program, and success breeds success. So, with funding, what you want to do is start thinking about identifying sources, project and applicant eligibility. You want to figure out some of your anticipated costs, project tasks and elements, and what funding you have secured and what is anticipated. And the last two on the list are partners and stakeholders, as well as assessing where you're at. And I'm going to talk about those in more detail because, again, they are really critical to a successful project, especially early on. So brownfields redevelopment is a team sport. And one of the first activities that you should initiate in the planning phase that will play an important role throughout the redevelopment process is the identification of stakeholders and the development of supportive partnerships. The redevelopment of a brownfields generally requires more stakeholder participation than a typical real estate transaction. Due to a number of possible factors, including the complex history of the site, community concerns about public health impacts and safety, difficulty getting funding and financing, and competing visions for the site's redevelopment. In addition, the cost of redeveloping a contaminated property often goes well beyond available local resources, and therefore partnerships are critical for success. So again, why are partnerships important? Partners bring resources and specialized knowledge. Partnerships foster communication and collaboration and build bridges between relevant stakeholders. These are, there are several typical partners involved in brownfields redevelopment. For instance, agencies of the federal government, such as the US EPA, provide both funding and technical assistance and expertise. You have territorial environmental and economic development agencies, such as Virgin Islands DPNR, VIEDA, and the Housing Authority, also bring important resources to brownfield redevelopment projects. Real estate professionals can help communities better understand the realities of the real estate market and can suggest various incentives that would help make local brownfields redevelopment projects economically viable. A public-private partnership between a local government and a real estate developer is an effective collaboration for brownfields redevelopment, especially in weak market areas. You can also include universities or colleges. They can be valuable partners in the brownfields redevelopment process. Professors, researchers, and graduate students may provide insight and expertise on brownfield-related topics. Some universities and colleges host design studios in which students work on real-world redevelopment projects. And then other typical partners would include bankers and lenders, chamber of commerce or business owners, neighborhood associations and other community groups, nonprofits, environmental consultants, and environmental justice organizations. But in some circumstances, you're going to need to go beyond the usual suspects. So there are other groups and organizations that can add value to your brownfields project redevelopment team, and they can offer important resources. So for example, local artists and cultural institutions can be great partners in bringing attention to brownfield sites. They can also suggest creative ways to engage the community and envision the property's reuse. And they can participate in creatively marketing the sites. So the benefits of creating meaningful partnerships and collaborations include, it helps with community engagement. It helps you access funding. It increases your ability to tackle complex brownfield issues, and it creates avenues and future partnerships for redevelopment. Another major planning task is assessing where you're at. So what do I mean by assessing where you're at? Many communities, they have a tendency to become what we call site-centric, and that is that they focus only on the brownfields property itself and the associated contamination challenges. But it's important, that brownfield practitioners take a step back and first look at how the site fits within the context of the larger community. So what you need to do is, you want to assess plans that are out there and how they relate to your brownfield site. For instance, look at your municipal master plan. What does the master plan say about the area of the town in which your site is located? Are there any redevelopment plans for the area in which your site lies that relate to your site? Is your site within a vulnerable area, such as one that frequently floods? You want to look at the zoning for your site. What uses are permitted on that site? Placing your brownfields site within the context of the larger community helps inform the ultimate redevelopment vision for the site. It's also important to find out what actions have also been taken, such as, has a brownfields inventory already been prepared for the area that you're focusing on, showing where all the brownfields are. Have there been investments in the area surrounding the site, such as infrastructure improvements, which may include road, rail, utilities, so on and so forth. And then you want to focus on the brownfield site itself. Find out all that you can about the site. You want to find out who owns it. Is it privately owned? Is it publicly owned? What are the current issues and conditions of the site? Has there been an assessment conducted for the brownfield site that indicates contamination? If you don't own the site, do you have access to the site? You have to remember, if you don't have access and you're looking to assess it, one feeds the other. No access, no assessment. So you want to be able to determine that early on. And is there already a developer interested in the site? So next, I want to talk about community engagement. So let's. Oh, I'm sorry. My computer keeps throwing the wrong slide in front of me. So why is it important to plan? It's about getting your ducks in a row and positioning to set and meet the goals of your brownfield redevelopment process. Taking the time to plan is going to help you garner community participation and support for the redevelopment. It's going to help you write a stronger grant application when you're seeking funding, because it helps funders see that this is a real project, not just an idea, that its nexus was formed in a sound planning process. It's going to strengthen the marketability of your site. Developers have a good picture of the overall project, so they know what they're getting into. It's going to show that the community's commitment to the project to potential developers. It's also going to help you attract the type of developer that you want, those interested in building projects that are desired by the community. And it's also going to provide continuity for the ultimate redevelopment of the site. Remember that elected officials come and go, but a solid vision and solid plan can endure those types of changes. So the next phase of a Brownfields project is community engagement. Engaging your community starts in the planning process and should continue all the way through the redevelopment phase. So what I'm going to do today is quickly discuss the elements that comprise the process of engaging your community. So the first thing you want to do is determine who is the community. Is it an elderly community? What do they have access to as far as communications? So you want to have a good idea who you're going to be approaching. You want to also know why you're engaging that community. You know, what's the purpose? What do you hope to achieve with your engagement? You don't want to just do this for the sake of doing it. You want to make sure that you do it in a meaningful way. You want to figure out how you will engage the community. Are in-person meetings preferable? Can you use local faith-based organizations or community organizations to get the word out and communicate information? You want to determine when you're going to engage the community, which is basically early and often. They should be a part of the process throughout the process. And what will you do with the results of the engagement? Again, you don't want to just do it because you said you had to do it. You want to do it and make it meaningful, and you want to incorporate what that community's feedback is into your project. So that's basically the overview of Brownfields portion of today's boot camp. So what I'm going to do now is turn it over to Austin Colwood from Virgin Islands DPNR, and he's going to talk a little bit about the Brownfields process in the Virgin Islands. So Austin, over to you. Austin, you have to make sure you're unmuted.
All right, good. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Jean-Pierre Oriol, the Commissioner of the Department of Planning and Natural Resources, I would like to welcome you to the second in a series of Brownfield 101. Hang on a second here. That we hope will help to provide a platform for stimulating interest in revitalizing the historic communities and properties in the territory. My name is Austin Colwood, and I am the Director of Environmental Protection for the department. DPNR hosts a Brownfield program for the territory, and we hope to sponsor and coordinate these, presentations. Steve Vroom of the New Jersey Institute of Technology and the Region 2 EPA Associates are giving you and will give you a lot of the details on how the program works and some potential outcomes. And I think that's probably the biggest part that we'll look forward to. How do we make this work for us? What we do in the department is provide the gateway to access the services of the program by doing the initial review and processing of your request, usually for a phase 1 assessment of the property or area that you are concerned with. The property profile is then sent to EPA for determination on whether or not it qualifies for the program. And I think that that determination, and it's probably it's a back and forth, especially given the areas that you typically will be looking at, which is downtown Frederiksted. The phase 1 assessment is a major first step, the first major step in getting access and assistance from key economic development partners like EDA, nonprofit entities, and private sector collaborators. The presentation will cover many of these factors, and I'll return at the end to answer any questions on how the department interfaces with the larger program. So I'll turn it back to Steve, but just to know that our role is to help facilitate getting the phase 1 assessment for you, which really is, as I said, is a gateway for you accessing the larger Brownsfield program. All right.
Great.
Thank you, Steve.
Excellent. Thank you, Austin. So let's see. Everybody still see my slides?
No, not yet.
Can you see my slides now?
Just your name, Sean.
Not sure why it's not working. Not now either?
I don't see anything.
Okay, hold on 1 minute. Sorry, everybody. I apologize. Something's not working here.
Here we go.
You see it?
Yep.
Okay, is that, I know it's the wrong slide, but you can see them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, so sorry, I apologize, everyone. I'm not sure what happened there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it over to Shanine Mitchell and Terry Wesley from US EPA Region 2. But before I do that, they're going to talk about their funding programs. I just want to give you a quick little kind of funding lead in. So no brownfield project is funded by a single funding source. They're typically funded by multiple sources, which we refer to as the funding stack. Now I have some examples of potential brownfield funding sources listed on the slide, but it's by no means a comprehensive list, and which sources might be brought to bear on any project depends on the elements that specific project. So for example, a brownfields project might have a pedestrian bridge that is located or accesses that site. Therefore, USDOT funding sources may be applicable to that project. So cobbling these sources together, the various funding sources, takes some effort. And that is why, as I mentioned earlier, implementing a good planning practices is extremely important for success. There's one source of funding, however, that is consistently available that not only addresses brownfields assessment and cleanup, but also provides funding to train individuals to perform the work associated with assessment and cleanup, and that's EPA's Brownfields Grants Program. And again, that's exactly what Terry Wesley and Shanine Mitchell are going to discuss. So again, here, I'll turn it back over, hopefully successfully. Give it a shot. Let's, okay, Shanine, you should be a presenter now.
All right. Bear with me 1 second, everyone. Let's see how this works.
While we're waiting for Shanine, I was going to say that stack of pancakes was looking mighty tempting.
That wasn't my breakfast this morning, that's for sure.
Ooh, what are you guys seeing?
We can see your slides. You just need to
All right.
get to slideshow.
Let me see. Hold on 1 second. There it goes. Slideshow.
There you go. And again, as we go through this, everybody, while Shanine is setting up, feel free to put any questions you might have into the Q&A chat pane.
Okay.
You're good to go, Shanine.
All right. Thanks, Sean. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your boot camp, and I'm going to be your guide on our EPA Brownfields program along with Terry Wesley. But I serve as the Regional Brownfields Coordinator, and I'm also a Brownfields Project Officer, so I manage many different types of grants. And I also serve as the coordinator of our Brownfields Job Training Program. And so this presentation that we are going to be presenting to you, we did back in May, in St. Croix, and we wanted to do it again. We'll do it as many times as needed, as long as people want this information. And this is also a presentation that we shared with Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett's office. So I apologize in advance if some things sound a little bit redundant, but I just wanted to give you some background information. So here we go. So just want to share with you some of our few team contacts that we have in the Brownfields program. You may have already coordinated with them already, but just wanted to give you a connection to who's doing what in our Region 2 EPA Brownfields program. And we do have 2 new staffers, so we'll make sure to update our slide. So you heard from Sean about what's a brownfield property, but just wanted to give you again the definition. And we estimate that there are over 450,000 brownfields in the US. So I know Sean took you through the ropes of the different types of brownfield sites, but these are some of the brownfield sites that we have identified in the Region 2 Brownfields program, and we work very closely with the VI Housing Authority with the Estate Downell redevelopment project, and we're really proud of that. And we hope to continue to do more great work in the Virgin Islands. So now I'm going to take you through the different types of EPA brownfield grants. And the brownfield grants really lay the foundation of our program. These grants are definitely to help you with your goal of revitalizing a neighborhood or a particular area. I know that for the Virgin Islands, we are in different stages of redevelopment. So there is probably a grant out here for you. So I'm going to go into it really briefly. And we're going to start off with our brownfield assessment grants. And they're exactly as they sound. They provide you funding to do assessments, phase 1 or phase 2. But most importantly, to start to develop a brownfield inventory, to start that planning, as Sean mentioned, and most importantly, to engage the community. So like, for instance, if you're taking a look at the Frederiksted area and you want to look closely at Lagrange, right? Yeah, we know that there are multiple abandoned properties out there, but do you have a really good sense of how many of them are brownfields? So this is where our funding could come in for you to identify how many of those sites are actually brownfields, and you use the money to hire a contractor to do that. Or you can start working on it yourself, because we know that there's so many people in the community, they can already tell you that that's an abandoned site. It may have some potential contamination, and that's how you start to develop your inventory. You work very closely, and that's where Sean started to talk about the partnerships, why partnerships are so important. So once we establish our inventory, that's when we start to figure out which sites are a priority. And once we figure out the prioritization of these sites, that's when we can get into the assessment of these sites. So starting off with which site needs a phase 1, which site needs a phase 2, and helping to guide you towards the planning of the redevelopment of this area. And again, as I mentioned, bringing the community in on different phases of the project. So that's what our assessment grants are designed to do. So then we have our brownfield cleanup grants. And these are exactly as they sound too. They are designed to provide funding to carry out cleanup activities at brownfield sites, and the sites have to be owned by the applicant. And we'll get into a little bit later on who's eligible for our different types of funding. But again, once you go through the role of getting the assessments done, you're gonna, if needed, you're gonna want to come to us to help you with the cleanup of that site. And that's what our cleanup grants are designed to do. So then we have our Brownfields multi-purpose grants. And this is a pretty new grant program, but really worthwhile. And this is where we provide funding to do the assessment and the cleanup in one program, as opposed to applying for an assessment grant, competing for it, and then having to go ahead and compete for the cleanup grant in a separate competition. You can do it all in one shot. So all we ask is that you conduct some eligible site assessments and cleanup activities within this particular grant program. And you have to focus on a targeted area. So for instance, if you wanted to look at that Lagrange area, just as an example, you can definitely apply for a multi-purpose grant, be able to do an assessment and a cleanup in that area, that one target area. So then I'm going to move on down to our Brownfields Revolving Loan Fund grants. And these grants are designed to provide loans, low interest loans, to eligible entities to help them clean up their brownfield sites. And so once those loans are repaid, it goes back into the loan program to be loaned out again. So hence that revolving loan fund capability, which a lot of our Region 2 applicants have taken advantage of. And then finally, we have our Brownfields Job Training Grants. And this is designed to provide environmental training to residents within Brownfields communities that are either unemployed or underemployed, and they definitely have to be impacted by brownfields, but this is another really great program, and we'll talk a little bit about it in detail in the next slides. Uh-oh. Hold on one second. There we go. Just button. Okay, very good. Sorry about that. So let's talk about our brownfield assessment grants. So who's eligible? Well, we have governments, quasi-governments, regional councils, states, tribes, and nonprofits. There are two different types of grants you can compete for in the assessment grant program. So we have our community-wide, and this is for up to $500,000 for hazardous substances. And then you can also apply for just petroleum, or you can apply for hazardous and petroleum. But for each of the types that you apply for, you cannot exceed $200,000 for any one site. And then we have our site-specific program, which is up to $200,000 or up to $350,000 with a waiver. So a site-specific is where you have a site, like for instance, if we're looking at downtown Frederiksted, there's an old gas station, that's the only site that you're interested in for the assessment program. You go ahead, and if you're pretty sure, you're pretty confident that there's no other issues, there's no legal actions against that site, then we highly encourage you to apply for a site specific. But for many of the sites, and then for a site specific application, we request that you submit the information on the site up front so we can determine whether or not that site is eligible. So that's why we encourage a lot of our newer applicants to apply for a community-wide grant. Why? Because if a site is not eligible, you can always go back in and consider another site, other community-wide. But once you commit to a site specific, you're locked in. So community-wide, again, if you're looking at a target area, as I mentioned, I've been using the LaGrange area as an example. There's a couple of sites within that target area that need assessment. So we highly encourage you to do the community-wide. And then our newest grant program that we have is community-wide assessment for states and tribes. And this is very, very new. And we are awarding up to $2 million in assessment grant funding to states. So DPNR is definitely eligible to apply for that funding if they choose so. There's no cost share requirement under our assessment grant program. The period of performance is now 4 years, and then 5 years for states and tribes. And again, we talked about this for our assessment grant program. Our funds are designed for inventorying, for characterization, to do the assessment. You can do planning, as we've been mentioning all along, and definitely to conduct that community involvement. All right. So next, we're going to look at the cleanup grant program, and very similar eligible applicants, including nonprofits. The amount of funding available is one site or multiple sites at up to $500,000. There is a 20% cost share, and we could talk a little bit later about what a cost share entails. The period of performance is 3 years, and then we definitely want you to use the funding for cleanup activities, for reuse planning, and as we've been mentioning all along, community involvement. And I just wanted to just make a note that these funding amounts that I'm talking about They are not including the bill funding, and Terry's going to talk about that a little bit later, but this is our traditional funding amounts that we are allowing through our grant competitions. Right. So next, we're going to talk about our multi-purpose grant. Again, the same types of eligible entities. We have our governments, states, tribes, nonprofits. An applicant can apply for up to $800,000 per grant. You have to conduct at least one phase 2 environmental assessment and one brownfield site cleanup, and you have to provide an overall plan for revitalization of one or more brownfield sites if there's not a plan in place already. And I think that Mr. Protho talked a little bit about his goal for and plans for revitalization of an area. So if you guys already have that plan in place, this is a great opportunity for you to take advantage of our multi-purpose grant funding. The cost share requirement is $40,000 flat, not 20% like our other programs. The period of performance is 5 years, and some of the common eligible grant activities are a mix-up of the assessment and cleanup program. So you're going to do your inventory, your characterization, assessment, as we mentioned, your cleanup planning, you're going to do cleanup activities, and you're definitely going to involve the community. So next, we're going to talk about our Brownfield Revolving Loan Fund grants. And again, same eligible entities. We have our states, we have our nonprofits and governments that are eligible to apply. For one applicant, you can apply for up to $1 million. And if you decide to go in as a coalition, up to $1 million. There is a 20% cost share involved. The period of performance is 5 years. And as we mentioned previously, this is to capitalize the RLF program to provide loans and subgrants to carry out cleanup activities. Obviously, these loans and some grants would be awarded to eligible entities, but it's designed for them to do the cleanup, return the money so that the money could be loaned out again. So now we're going to talk a little bit about our job training grants. The eligible applicants include governments, regional councils, states, tribes, nonprofits, and universities. So we highly encourage, if you don't feel that you're strong enough to apply on your own, that you work very closely or partner with a university. The funding amount available for community, well, it's not really, I guess it's community-wide, is up to $200,000. Again, this is our traditional pots of funding. There are no cost share requirements for our Brownfields job training program. The period of performance is 3 years. We encourage you to do the first 2 years of training and then use your last year for placing individuals that graduate from the program. But, it's flexible and you can do training up into the 3rd year. So some of the common eligible activities include OSHA 40-hour training. As a matter of fact, OSHA 40-hour is a requirement for the job training program. We also have Superfund and Brownfield site-specific assessment and cleanup. We have environmental health and chemical safety, mold remediation, lead and asbestos, and mold will be a really good training opportunity for those in the VI, especially after the hurricanes. We know there's a lot of mold issues that took place. We also encourage OSHA disaster site worker and emergency response. This is also a really good course to have, especially with all that's taken place again in the in the Caribbean. And then leaking underground storage tank removal is also a very common topic amongst Region 2 grantees. So now we're going to talk a little bit, and I think Austin covered this pretty well, which is our Section 128 grants. And it's a grant program that's established just for state and tribal response. And as Austin said, if you have any questions about the state program, to reach out to him. But we at the EPA have provided this funding to states for quite some time now. And these cooperative agreements are awarded and administered by EPA, and they're done regionally. And these response programs are helping to address the assessment and cleanup and redevelopment of brownfields and other sites with actual or perceived contamination. So we appreciate working in partnership with DPNR and Austin and his team, and we hope to continue to do a lot of brownfields redevelopment work through the 128A program. So now I'm going to talk about our program that's not related to the grants, but we still provide a great deal of technical assistance resources, which will help to support brownfields redevelopment in the Caribbean. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about our targeted brownfield assessment program, and this is a really great program. So just if an entity is not able to, or they don't feel that they're able to apply for our competition or our assessment through our competition, they could come to us and request a targeted brownfield assessment or a TBA. And basically, TBAs are conducted by an EPA contractor on behalf of an eligible entity. And these services include site assessments, cleanup options, and community outreach. And services are about an average of $100,000. So this is a free service to anyone that's interested in conducting an assessment. You just have to be eligible for the program. So as Austin mentioned, you have to submit a site eligibility form to us, and we'll screen the site to make sure that it's eligible. There's no actions against the site. And then once that site is approved, we'll go in and we'll have our contractors perform the service for you. So this is a great way to get started into our EPA Brownfields program too. We know a lot of applicants that have received grants, assessment grants, or through the competitive way because of our targeted brownfield assessment program. So if you have questions about that, feel free to connect with us, and we'll provide you with more information on how to apply to our target. It's not really like an application. We accept requests on a rolling basis. So just make sure that you have the site that you're interested in getting assessment done. You come to us, submit that request, and then we'll start working on it as soon as possible. So next we have our TAB program, and Sean, I think, has been doing a fabulous job of representing the TAB program, and JT is an excellent resource when it comes to technical assistance. We are here to help, and I want to just thank Sean and Colette for doing such a stellar job and definitely putting this together. And again, if you need assistance, if you need more boot camps, if you need more workshops, we're here to help, and we will do that in partnership with our TAB provider. So now we're going to talk a little bit about our land revitalization program, and we've been talking about redevelopment. So what does that look like? Okay, you go through our program, our competitions, you've gotten the assessment done, you got the cleanup. Okay, great. So what's next? It's all about the planning on the reuse. And so through our land revitalization program, we're able to support you with developing the reuse of your site. So we provide direct technical assistance to communities who want to incorporate sustainable and equitable approaches to their revitalization projects, which I think would be perfect for some of the work that's being done in the Virgin Islands. Me as the Brownfields coordinator, I work very closely with our land revitalization coordinator on to the two different types of technical assistance I'm about to talk about. So we have what we're calling our regular land revitalization technical assistance, and these are for communities that don't necessarily have brownfield grants, but they're interested in finding out about site reuse and site design. And what we're looking for is we're looking for these communities to come to us, tell us about their land revitalization goals, and then we'll work with them to submit an application, and we will start working on some technical assistance. So basically, we want to connect with one or more contaminated or potentially contaminated sites. It could be an area. We want to advance the community's LR goals in a meaningful way, and we want to include a scope of work and deliverables which are needed to give realistic timeframes and a budget. And the project must be completed within a year. And that's for our typical land revitalization technical assistance. And then we have what's called our originally directed technical assistance for brownfield communities. And as the brownfield coordinator, I help to identify and prioritize technical assistance projects that are within our competitive brownfield grant program. So our Circle 128A, which is DPNR, and a lot of our recipients of our TBA grant, TBA program, as well as our EPA brownfield grants, are definitely eligible to apply for our originally directed technical assistance, and it serves the same purpose. We help communities to provide site reuse design or funding planning for their projects. And these projects we have about $300,000 for brownfield site design and about $250,000 for brownfields funding and financing. So please, if you have any interest in our programs, reach out to us and we'll provide you with the resources or the assistance that you need to apply and receive this technical assistance. So we are chugging along. I know it's a lot of information, but we are more than willing to repeat and provide you with links to a lot of this information. So just going to go into a little bit more detail about the technical assistance request for regional projects. We have about $30,000 in technical assistance available per project. As I mentioned, the projects must be completed within a year. It's not a competition. I know I've been saying applications, but it's non-competitive. On an annual basis between January and March, our LR coordinator and myself as the Brownfields coordinator, we convene to review and discuss projects for the year. Again, if you are interested in this type of assistance, I want to start having that conversation with you early and to help you start preparing for the request. And the request is generally around January when we start to look for new communities for this technical assistance. And then for our regional land revitalization coordinators, they identify community-based projects that fit within the LR program goals. The proposed projects need to clearly connect to one or more contaminated or potentially contaminated sites. Again, it could be in an area, advance the community's LR goals in a meaningful way. I think we mentioned this, and include a scope of work and deliverables as needed. And they have to be realistic and within the given time frame and budget. And our regional staff oversee and fully participate in the technical assistance projects. And then OBLR staff, they manage the project resources, including the contractors and the timeline. So again, this is similar to our targeted brownfield assessment, but on the technical assistance side, you would submit a request to us in the region. Then we would work with our headquarters staff to approve the technical assistance, and then our EPA contractors would then begin to do the work. So if you have any interest in this program, we ask you to take a look at our link that's included in the slide, and you can definitely connect with us, and we'll start to get that process rolling for you. So then again, just wanted to relay a little bit of information. Regionally directed technical assistance, all very much the same. We're looking at any brownfield grantee, our 128A grants, our TBA recipients. You're definitely eligible to apply for the regionally directed technical assistance. You can focus on one or more brownfield sites. Regions can propose several small projects or one large project. We have up to $300K for site design and marketing analysis. We have up to $250K for brownfields funding and financing. And I believe we just did a technical assistance project in downtown Frederiksted to look at some site designs along the boardwalk and waterfront to help out with some of the cultural heritage ideals and concepts that they want to keep. So we have been working very closely in the VI, and we want to continue to work in the VI and provide more technical assistance. So if you have projects that you think are eligible for our program, again, please reach out to us. Again, this is not a competition, very similar to our, like I said, our targeted brownfield assessment. And again, I won't go over how the process works, but again, we work very closely with our headquarters office and regional staff to make these projects happen, and the projects must be completed within a year. And here are just some of the typical types of technical assistance. I won't read them out, but some of it is really interesting. If you needed a funding charrette, if you needed to identify next steps and actions for implementing redevelopment projects, which a lot of our communities take advantage of, financial feasibility or implementation plan for site reuse, that's also very good. And then a very popular technical assistance is the site reuse design and revitalization plans. Really key. And it really helps you to move your brownfields redevelopment forward and help you to get to the stage where a developer is interested in your project. So just something to consider. Again, these are other types of technical assistance. I'll just hold this real quick for a couple minutes so you guys can take a look at some of the types of technical assistance. But again, all very good, and we could always work with you to also figure out the types of technical assistance that you may need. Also prioritizing the types of technical assistance for any one project, you may need like 8 of these things that are mentioned. So we'll work with you to see like which ones are key and which ones you should definitely bring forth if you're interested in applying for our technical assistance, because what we can do too is you can apply for one round and then we'll come back in then the following year do an analysis to see if you're eligible for a second, I want to call it a dose, but a second phase of technical assistance through this program. Great. So now I'm going to turn over to the esteemed Terry Wesley, who's going to talk to you about the Brownfields program and the bipartisan infrastructure law. Thank you, Terry. Take it away. You want me to move the slides for you?
Please, thanks so much, Janine. And please don't use the word esteem next to me there. Get confused. First and foremost, thank you, Janine, Sean, Austin, Colette, and of course, Mr. Protho there for your introductions and discussion so far. It's great to bring people together and discussing brownfields redevelopment. I think for those who are participants here, attendees, what you're getting out of this so far is that clearly, as Sean indicated, the triple bottom line, environmental, economic, and social equity permeates throughout the brownfields program. And clearly as well, the level of collaborations and partnerships are pronounced and are uber important as it relates to moving projects from the infancy onward and throughout the redevelopment process. So want to have a little opportunity here to talk to you guys before we turn to the next slide. And that is before we go there, Janine, talked to you guys and did a stellar job in identifying the various, competitive grant programs we have available, multi-purpose assessment, revolving loan fund, and cleanup. We affectionately call it MARC, as well as a non-competitive, of course, with Mr. Callwood here, and I know Dr. Clint Chappelle is here as well as an attendee, managing the Circle 128A, territorial response program, and that with those particular elements here, we do have our hands full, but those technical assistance projects that Janine indicated just now is growing rather rapidly. We're seeing an influx of those over the past several years, and we're seeing it elevate to the status of almost to some degree as some of our smaller grant programs. And so we're looking forward to once again promoting that and maintaining that throughout the years. But as part of that whole effort, it just showcases that the program, when we see there may be these little cracks or little areas in which people need some additional technical assistance, we can meet those. And so with these particular free contract programs that have in place, it can help you to get over that little hump or that little block in the road to move your projects along. So let me go into some great news here, which is related to the Brownfields program and the bipartisan infrastructure law. Steve, would you mind turning to the next slide? So folks may have heard, back in November of last year, President and administration, signed off on a historic investment, identified as the bipartisan infrastructure law. Internally, we call it bill, infrastructure law. For the Brownfields program in and of itself, let me give you a point of reference. The Brownfields program has been around since 1995. And as Shanine indicated, the annual appropriations funding that we have available, both for our competitive grant programs, as well as the non-competitive ones like the Circle 128A, the state response programs. To date, I think we've invested about $2.2 billion, just to give you guys. So that's like for the past, what's that, 27 years of an investment, and that's great, right? Nationwide. But let me just show you here what is now taking place with the infrastructure law. It's been an infusion of 1.5 billion. That's going to be on top of what we get on an annual basis, and that now is garnering a lot of attention. Of course, this speaks to the administration's focus on Justice 40, working more closely with communities that have been impacted over the years, and particularly for us, for those historically that haven't participated in our program. I say that to say this. To date, we have only, based on my calculations, have provided or awarded to the Virgin Islands about $2.5 million in brownfield funding support. That's directly to Mr. Callwood's and Dr. Pell's group there at the Department of Planning and Natural Resources. We have yet to award an assessment grant, or cleanup grant, revolving loan fund, and job training. We have provided the technical assistance services. So believe you me, we are very interested and want to work together with you all, of course, working with Sean and Colette with NGIT to see how we may be able to help and further assist you guys in applying for and successfully obtaining awards going forward that is under those particular grant programs. So here under the historic program, those numbers that Shanine provided per grant, here's a little chart here to showcase what we provide on an annual basis. You heard some of those numbers now, right? There's been a slight bump up in all of them on an annual basis, but as you'll see, we're talking like 500,000 for assessment cleanup, 800,000 multi-purpose, revolving loan $1 million, the job training 200,000. You look now to the right of that, under the bipartisan infrastructure law, what potentially could be for an individual grant. Now, I will say this, over the past couple of months, headquarters and the regions have been getting together and talking about how do we make sure that we can spread this out among all the communities. And therefore, that number you see there, like a 10 million, 5 million, it more than likely will not be that high, because we want to make sure we can divvy up those funds across the board. But it's safe to say that it will be more than what's currently identified in the existing annual appropriations. Once again, this is a combination. It's not in lieu of. That is the Brownfields infrastructure funding. It's not going to replace our annual funding. We're still getting the annual funding, which is on par of like $80 million for competitive grant programs, about $50 million nationwide for the 128 response programs for the states and tribes. So this is on top of that. It's going to be an infusion of around $240 million for competitive grant programs on top of that 80 for based on the infrastructure that's added on to the annual appropriation. And for the response programs, it's about $60 million that's going to be added on to the current $50 million that we get in the annual appropriation. So clearly there's a lot of funding out there available, a lot of interest on our part to see how best we can serve folks here. And as I note, the impetus here is to really extend our ability to do outreach and expanding marketing in areas that have historically not participated in the program. So basically, that's the breakdown you see there on the left. That 1.5 billion is going to be spread over a 5-year period. That's $300 million a year. Doing the math, 80% of that goes towards the competitive grant programs, and then 20% of 300 million of that is going to go to the 128 program. So that's sort of how it's divvied up. Shanine, next slide. If we have.
Sure. And then the cost share?
Absolutely. So thanks for that, Shanine. So as Shanine indicated, when it came to the cleanup and the multi-purpose as well as revolving loan fund, you heard about cost share requirements. One of the things in which headquarters is also was mindful of, and this came about due to several stakeholder sessions that they had with members of the communities throughout the country, and asked them, well, how can we, help you guys going forward? Most things, folks mentioned was, it's difficult sometimes to provide that cost share component for some of these grants. And so if you want to, help us out in any way, perhaps maybe there may be a way you guys could waive that. So headquarters heard, and I'm happy to say they have actually waived now the cost share requirement for those cleanup, multi-purpose, and revolving loan fund grants that are going to be funded under bipartisan infrastructure law. That is tremendous news. Therefore, just like the assessment grant, there's no cost share. Those programs as well will not require cost share. So that's an important element that needs to be mentioned. And thank you, Shani, for highlighting this now.
No problem. Got you back, Terry.
Okay.
All right. Did you want to go into this or?
You can go right ahead.
All right. So now that we've talked about all of our wonderful grant competition programs and the technical assistance, we wanted to just offer you guys a glimpse into some of the other resources and publications that we have available. So we have been working diligently on a regional Brownfields brochure. It's called Brownfields Are Opportunities, and we can provide you with links to this particular document, but it's really like a good guide as to what our regional Brownfields program is all about and how our regional Brownfields program can help you with your redevelopment goals or revitalization goals. Then recently issued was our 2021 Brownfields Federal Programs Guide. And this is an excellent tool because it gives you basically a snapshot into all of the different federal agencies that support brownfields with additional technical assistance and other financial resources. So this is also a really good guide, especially if you're looking at ways to leverage funds towards your brownfield redevelopment projects. I highly encourage any entity to look to the 2021 Brownfields Federal Programs Guide, because you never know what's out there until you have it in your hands, and you never know how it's going to help assist you if you're applying for an application, anything, and how easy it is to receive or how complex it could be to receive this funding, so these different types of funding. So definitely want to check that out. And then we also have our tab Easy Grant Writing tool. So if you're interested in applying for any of our Brownfield competitive grants, this tool is designed to help you with preparing your grant application. It provides hints and support for the different types of criteria, but most importantly, we always encourage you to reach out to NJIT, our tab provider, who can also help you with preparing those grant applications as well. And I think we're on to our last slide. Nope, we're not. We're going to talk about the upcoming solicitations. So right now, we are currently in the FY 2023 Job Training Grant Competition. The applications are due August 2nd. So very minimal time to prepare an application. And this particular grant competition, it starts the bill funding competition for the job training grants. So the grants are currently being awarded at $500,000, but that's not to say this is not a good opportunity to start planning for next year. And so we anticipate that the funding may remain at $500,000 or it may go higher because, as Terry mentioned, we have that wiggle room. So if you guys are definitely interested, I heard a lot about interest in the VI with job training. We could start to have conversations about how to prepare your application, how to put the right training partners together, how to engage the community that you're interested in applying for a grant. This is a really good way to start that part of the process so that when the announcement comes out for FY24, you're ripe and ready to apply. And then, of course, we'll work with you. We can work with NJIT, look at a previous awarded application, and then start from there. So stay tuned. We will definitely give you as much help as needed if you're interested in applying for the FY23 or the FY24 grant competition. And then our FY23 MARC grants, these are going to be combined with annual appropriation, the annual appropriation, as Terry mentioned, and the bill, the bipartisan infrastructure law funds. And those are anticipated to come out around the fall time. We're looking at maybe September 2022. So this is a really good time to start talking to NJIT, start talking to EPA if you're interested in applying for the multi-purpose, the assessment, the revolving loan, or the cleanup grants. And you're more than eligible to apply. So just come start talking to us about how you can start preparing your application. And then for FY23, the Circle 128A, which is our state and tribal response programs, the combined annual appropriation and bipartisan infrastructure law funds are going to be launched, I think, around October 2022. So please look out for that as well. And we always want to support our 128A grants. So let's make sure that you guys start preparing for that as well. Right. So now, last thing that we want to share with you is our National Brownfields Training Conference. And this is the conference designed to assist a wide variety of stakeholders in understanding the Brownfields universe that's out there from a national perspective. The conference is taking place August 16th to 19th, so we have a little bit of wiggle room if you're interested in attending the conference. The registration information is out there. I think there's still some hotel space left. I believe all of the travel scholarships, they probably have been assigned by now, but still a really great opportunity to understand all there is about what it takes to be a champion, like what type of developers you should look out for, what type of end use or reuse designs are available or out there that have been successful. How do you find leverage funding? How do you get investors? And just basically everything that you need to want to know about Brownfields. So highly encourage attendance at the National Brownfields Training Conference. We'll be there. We'll also be there to answer and address any questions. Unfortunately, I don't think any part of the conference is virtual this year. I think it's all in person, but still you have that opportunity, and then we could always follow up after the conference as well. But just want to make sure that you had ample opportunity to attend if you were interested. And I think that is about it. Thank you so much for allowing us to share all this great information about our Brownfields program. And I hope that, I know it was a lot of detail, but we're hoping that you have questions, that you'll reach out to us, and that you'll be interested in some of the resources that we shared with you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Shanine. Thank you, Terry. Lots of great information, great overview of the resources available, both in funding as well as technical. And good ending there when you're talking about the available grants, because that kind of segues into the next section that I'm going to cover. Let me just get my slides back up here. Okay, can you see that first slide?
Yes.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you. So, so starting early on your EPA Brownfields grant, as Shanine and Terry mentioned, coming up is, there's many grants out there. The job training grants are out there right now, but what I'm going to do is focus on what you can do to start preparing a MARC grant if you're interested in applying for one this coming fall. So, as Shanine mentioned, EPA solicits their MARC grants on an annual basis. And the typical solicitation cycle, again, starts with an RFA that's usually released in early fall. As Shanine mentioned, September, hopefully. The application submission date is approximately 6 weeks after the request for applications goes out. And then what happens is EPA announces the successful applicants the following spring after they go through their evaluation process. And then finally, the funding becomes available to the grantees in late summer after you do some administrative things and develop your work plan and get that approved with EPA. So roughly, it's a 1-year process between the RFA to having that money in hand. So why is starting early for these types of grants important in preparing a competitive application? Well, first, as I mentioned earlier, just before, there's only 6 weeks from the request for the applications to the submission date. That is not a lot of time, and it's usually during the fall, which is typically a very busy time of the year for most people. Second, it builds a solid planning foundation or continues existing planning efforts. In past years, EPA's put much more emphasis on the planning associated with a project, and although some planning activities are eligible under these grants, most successful applicants begin that planning process well in advance of applying. So regardless of the funding sources that you're going to maybe pursuing, it's always recommended that projects be based, again, on sound planning practices. And then third, it provides time to address the EPA application emphasis areas every year. EPA may have a little bit more of a focus or emphasis on one portion of the grant application or an element of the grant application. So you want to leave that 6 weeks that you're allowed from the RFA once the guidelines come out to the submission date to address those nuances. So there's a lot of information that's basically standard in an application that you want to start now. And lastly, it allows for a more involved technical assistance. So NJIT tab, as Shani mentioned, and I mentioned earlier, we're a free resource to communities, and part of those services that we provide includes grant application critiques. So instead of you sending your application, to us to review basically before the submission date, within that 6 weeks, you can send it earlier, and we can start providing you assistance throughout its preparation. And even if you don't have one drafted, or we can start helping you, point you in the right direction on what you should begin. And I'm going to cover a little bit of that in this presentation, or at least this section. So for all the EPA Brownfield MARC grants, the narrative ranking criteria is broken down into 4 major sections. Section 1 includes project area description and plans for revitalization. Section 2 includes community need and community engagement. And section 3, it includes task descriptions, cost estimates, and measuring progress. And then the last section, section 4, is programmatic capability and past performance. So I'm going to focus on activities that are associated with the criteria within sections 1 and 2 of the application of the narrative that you can start early. These sections are what I refer to as they're essentially the essay sections of the application, the last 2 being more the pro forma in nature. So this is where you can really kind of put that nuance into your application to make it more successful. So the tasks that I'm going to focus on that provide the basis for the first 2 narrative criteria sections include community engagement, demographic and health data collection, identification of relevant planning efforts and documentation, and brownfields identification and prioritization. And you're going to see a little bit of redundancy in some of the slides that I'm going to go through to what I had referred to and spoken about earlier on during the planning and community engagement overviews. So a critical element of a competitive EPA Brownfield grant is the development of an inclusive and effective community engagement plan. Now, that doesn't mean you have to have all of the tasks associated with the community engagement completed prior to your submission, but you can start thinking about what your engagement plan will look like and start that outreach process. One example of where these activities can be initiated is the identification and prioritization of the priority brownfield sites that you're going to highlight in your application. Having the community play a part in the identification of these sites shows community support and consideration for your project, and it helps define what the overall goals and how they meet the community's needs are going to be accomplished. So you may have already conducted community engagement activities that support this. If you have, you should identify and document those activities and make sure that the community engagement plan you include in your application incorporates them. So assuming that you've not started or have done minimal community engagement for a project, the very first step should be to identify who your project stakeholders and partners are. When you consider these stakeholders, you should make sure that you identify not only those affected by the project itself, but those that can bring effective resources as well as meaningful feedback and communication skills to the table. Don't just list as many as possible because you think it makes your application look good. You want quality over quantity here. And I'm not going to go through the list. You can see I went through them earlier on. The slide was almost identical as far as who your typical partners would be, as well as going beyond the usual suspects. The second element of a competitive application that should be embarked upon early is the demographic and health data collection, which is essentially the data that establishes community need. Why is community need data critical to writing a competitive application? Well, first, it quantifies community needs and challenges. You just can't make the statement without the data that supports those claims. So include data such as poverty rates, unemployment, loss of tax base, population decline, as well as health statistics that would include cancer rates, asthma rates, infant mortality, heart disease, etc. Comparative data such as target area versus territory or national rates can be very compelling, and again is critical to establishing community need. Second, it supports the community story. A strong brownfields application always tells a compelling story, and that story is comprised of three broad elements. First, you're going to outline the problem and challenges that are faced by the community. Then you're going to outline how you're going to remedy those problems or challenges. And then finally, you're going to outline what the results will be. Those are outcomes. So as I stated earlier, you're going to need to quantify and confirm those needs to support your story. And then finally, it helps identify project goals by identifying and supporting community needs and challenges, which should be the things you address in your project outcomes. So you want to make sure they match. So one of the biggest challenges in collecting this data for particular focus areas is finding current and available sources. So particularly when it comes to health data. Gathering this data and crafting it into your narrative can be a time-consuming process, so the sooner you start, the better. Some common and readily available sources include census data, you have health department data, Center for Disease Control, territory records, census tract data, community health needs assessments, EPA, EJ screen, as well as EPA's EnviroFacts. Sometimes data may not be readily available through some of those sources, so you need to look at other less common sources, and that may include Google Maps, recent local comprehensive or revitalization plans, comprehensive economic development strategies or other regional plans, as well as local hospital or urgent care centers. For if you can get data from them, again, that maybe highlights asthma or lead poisoning admissions, you can use that in your application. So on this slide, I've provided you with a list of some of the data sources along with the URLs so that you have a good place to start in collecting that data if you are interested in applying for a grant. I won't go through the entire list, but I did want to point out two particularly useful websites you can use that'll preliminarily identify vulnerable communities related to your selected or potential application focus areas, and those include EPA's EnviroFacts and EJ Screen. EnviroFacts is a database that enables users to retrieve environmental information from multiple sources for whatever area you're interested in. You simply put in the address, the zip code, the city, the county, the water body, a park name, etc., and whatever environmental data such as air quality, water quality, toxins should be available. It'll retrieve it. And you also want to look at EJ Screen, which is a mapping and screening tool based on nationally consistent data that combines environmental and demographic indicators and maps and reports. If you visit the website, there are instructions on how to use the tool and to understand the results that it generates. And again, this is something that NJIT can assist you, pointing you in the right direction on where to collect this data. Another element of a grant application is the identification of relevant planning efforts and documentation. As I mentioned earlier, EPA places much emphasis on the planning related to these brownfield application projects. The reason for this is that the project that is based on solid planning has a greater chance of success. Good planning is a great indicator of a community's support for a project and commitment to taking those projects through to redevelopment. So it's not only important in the eyes of EPA, but developers want to see that they will have minimal obstacles in developing a property. And for any developer, time is money and a huge factor in whether a project is financially viable or not. Some plans that you should consider when you develop your brownfields application include target area specific redevelopment plans, master plans, zoning, and transportation plans. And again, you want to make sure that these plans are relevant to your proposed projects. In some cases, there may not be any relevant plans like those that I just mentioned that are available. However, stakeholder community engagement findings would be considered planning to support a project. So the last element that I want to discuss is brownfield identification and prioritization. Choosing the best sites to include in your application can make or break your brownfield grant application. So why is it so important? Well, first, it shows a comprehensive approach again, and that you have given careful thought to your project approach. Secondly, it makes the best case for your application story. You want to choose sites that have the best associated data to make your case. And third, it focuses project goals. By that, I mean, if your project goal is open and green space, you want to have selected sites that can accommodate this type of reuse and is supported by consistent planning. So when you select your sites, you want to think about, is there an existing brownfield inventory? And are you drawing from sites on that inventory? Is the site located within your target area or project emphasis areas, such as a downtown or a gateway? Does the site meet EPA's definition of a brownfield? You want to confirm with EPA's regional office that your site is eligible. Does the data associated with your project or your priority sites highlight your community's challenges to the greatest extent possible? And do your priority sites have the potential to meet project goals? Again, if your project goals are for green space or residential, make sure that the sites can accommodate that type of reuse. And to determine this, you would consider site size, what's the zoning, what kind of access is there to the site, such as roads, rail, water, as well as other utilities. If you're interested in how to use GIS to do this kind of inventorying work, we do have a webinar posted on the NJIT tab website that I recommend you go and watch. It's really good. It's not only focuses on just the GIS, how to take the data and incorporate it, but where to find the data. So this probably sounds like a lot to do. And if I did leave you feeling that way, I've made my point, because these particular grant elements, you want to start them as early as possible. You want to go beyond and getting an early start and gather this data allows you to determine your focus area priority brownfield sites. It'll help develop the most compelling and competitive brownfield application possible. And with all this information in front of you, you can adjust focus area boundaries. It'll help you select priority sites and develop project goals that all relate to each other and emphasize your community's challenges to the greatest extent possible. So that's the end of the presentations. As I mentioned earlier, if you have any questions, please put it into the Q&A pane and we'll answer them. So let me go and open up, stop sharing.
Sean, can I make a couple of comments?
Sure, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Colette Santaseri, and along with Sean and Kaylin Bruno, we run the NJIT TAB program. We used a couple of terms often, and I just wanted to make sure that you understood what those terms mean. We've talked about assessment a lot, and the basic definition of assessment when we use that is it's determining if your site is contaminated, and some brownfields are not contaminated, but through the assessment process, it's determining if your sites are contaminated, and if they are contaminated, what the contamination is and the extent of that contamination. Sometimes sites, as I said, are not contaminated, or there's some contamination just in a portion of the site, or some sites are heavily contaminated. But the assessment process is making that determination, finding out if they're contaminated and what they're contaminated with. And that leads to determining the cleanup. And when we use that term cleanup, it's really dealing with the contaminants. Sometimes, and that cleanup, as we use that word, really ranges in what needs to be done on a particular site. Sometimes cleanup means removing all the contaminants, and sometimes cleanup is just controlling some of the contaminants, keeping them on site, but having them separated from the public when they're using that site. So cleanup can mean a lot of different things, and it really depends on the type of contamination on a site and the extent of that contamination. So, and then we've used the terms phase 1 and phase 2. That's in line with assessment, determining, doing the background work, doing all the sampling to determine if your sites are contaminated, and if they are, what they're contaminated with and the extent of that contamination. So I just wanted to make those definitions because we tend to use those words a lot and forget that some people don't know what they mean. So that's it.
Okay, no,
Back to you, Sean.
thank you for that clarification. That's helpful, I'm sure. I didn't realize, you know, sometimes you get wrapped up and you don't think that people know the
yeah.
nomenclature and the language that we operate within. So
Yeah, we're all guilty of that. We all do that.
So I don't see any questions put into the pane, but so what I want to do now is just, I have, if you look at the screen, I've put up the contact information for Terry, Shanine, Austin, and myself. If you have any questions, I know a lot of my questions, my best thoughts happen after the fact. So if anything comes to mind, if you have any questions, you can contact any one of the four of us. Again, we're here, NJIT Tab is here as a resource. Even if you're not sure, you know, what your question might be or how you might use us, you can still reach out to us. We can have that conversation and you know, and figure out maybe how to set a plan for you to move forward and how we can plug ourselves in along the course of that plan. So I'll open it up to does Terry, Shanine, or Austin, do any of you have any closing comments you want to make?
I just wanted to say that was an awful lot of information that came pretty fast and furious to most. And as you said, you know, with maybe not familiar with the vocabulary, may have gotten lost. Some of it may have gotten lost in transmission. But just to know that we are here, you have our contact information. Give us a call, and we'll get you started where you are. And when we're here for you.
And I also wanted to stress once again, and we've said it a bunch of times, Terry mentioned that there have been no assessment grants in the VI, and we want to change that, and EPA wants to change that. So we are here to help you. If you do have sites, you do have focus areas that have brownfields, give us a call. We'll walk you through the process. Sean did a great job in walking you through what you could be doing now. But call us and we'll continue to talk you through that. We'll continue to show you where to get all of that data. These applications are really about telling your story and why these brownfields are causing your community harm and why the EPA funding is so important to changing that and to getting these sites redeveloped. So do not hesitate to call. We will walk you through all of that. We will give you tips on how to strengthen your application. We'll show you where the data is. You can call us as often as you need to. Email us as often as you need to. That's why we're here, to help you along. So please do not hesitate in reaching out to NJIT Tab.
Excellent. Thank you. So Terry or Shanine, do you have any closing comments?
I was just going to say that we can make the presentations available if needed, because there's a lot of detail in the presentations, and we'd love to share some of our regional resources. As I mentioned, the Brownfields brochure, the Brownfields Region 2 booklet, really great resource, especially if you're trying to get started into the Brownfields program. And I know there was mention of workforce development. So again, we know that the announcement or the request for applications is due August 2nd. so we can start to have conversations now to start building up to applying for next year. So if that's anything, or if anyone's interested in having a discussion about that, please let me know. We could reach out and do another session on through virtual or in person. That would be great. Would love to have a job training grant in the VI. That would make my day.
Yeah, the only thing I would just add on, first and foremost, Shanine, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. You know, getting together with folks like Colette and Sean with NGIT and what they're doing in the Technical Assistance Brownfields program, as well as with Austin Callwood and Dr. Pell there with DPNR. And thank you for Robert Prother for setting this up, hosting this. Clearly, the thing is, and I don't know how much I can emphasize it, as Colette just indicated again, we really want to see these competitive grant programs within the U.S. Virgin Islands. And while we're talking about Frederiksted, surely St. Thomas, St. John, the entire territory is in our radar in terms of our approach. That is, we can do more marketing. This is not a one and done in terms of a boot camp. You know, NGIT will be here, and as well as we going forward. So I'll just say the door is open. The contact information is there. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us. That's what we're here for. And then at the same time, once everything is done, dust is settled, and that site has been redeveloped, we'll come out there and have a customary, maybe bottle of wine for those who don't drink, maybe some cold water. But outside of that, just want to say thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. And I'll turn it back to you, Sean. Thanks again.
Great. Thank you. Well, being as there are no questions, so we, like I said, we must have done a great job. But anyway, if you do have questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. Before I end today, I'd love to, thank you to Clean Sweep Frederiksted for hosting this event. We love working with organizations such as yourself. It's really a great venue and avenue for us to build those relationships and provide the assistance that we do for free. So,
Sean,
yes.
Can I add one more thing, please? I'm sorry, and please forgive my memory. If anyone online is interested in applying for our FY23 funding, we do have what we call outreach workshops or guideline workshops, where we'll go over the new application, what's required, and we'll go through it section by section. I know Sean mentioned a couple sections, or all the sections actually, in his presentation, but we do have a more detailed overview of the guidelines, what you need to do to apply for whatever particular grant competition. So highly encourage that. We'll be working very closely with NGIT to start preparing them. We have your contact information, so we'll be sending you notices on when we're going to have those workshops in case if you're interested in applying for the FY23 funding.
And Shanine, that happens after the request for funding is issued, correct?
Yes. So once EPA announced on a national level that the funding is now available and you can apply for it, usually like a week or 2 or 3 after that big announcement, we'll do an outreach workshop just to make sure everybody's comfortable with the guidelines, they understand it, and we can answer, or actually NGIT could answer a lot of questions about your particular projects, but we could answer questions about the actual guidelines.
Great. All right. Well, with that, I want to thank all our speakers today. You guys did an awesome job. And I will close out today's boot camp. And again,
Sean, thank you. On behalf of Clean Sweep, I want to thank you and the rest of the panel for taking the time to present the information today. We appreciate it, and as well as thanking all of the participants that joined today. It was very helpful. So thank you.
you're welcome. Our pleasure.
Absolutely.
Take care. Everybody have a great day.
Take care, everybody.